Hi ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the NEL channel. I know I haven't been posting for a while, but don't worry, I'm back today and we're going to talk about something quite interesting and peculiar. This is the Visioneers VE8. There we go. I've always found Visioneers to be a bit peculiar, you know. I've noticed them for a long time before, back when they were competing against 1964 years and Jerry Harvey as well. They always only had like 4 drivers. I think the first flagship was the VE4 that was out a long time ago against the Brazilian drivers that 1964 years back then, 64 audio now, and Jerry Harvey was actually putting in their custom IEMs. And I always thought that was rather funny, right? How can 4 drivers match up to 16 drivers? Surely, you know, how can this be allowed? It's not a good deal, but I think the proof of the pudding was when I first tried the VE4, and boy, I was blown. You know, they cost as much as the other flagships, but they achieve so much with just 4 balanced armatures, and I think it's quite amazing. Now, the NEL channel is not sponsored by Visioneers at all. Now, with the VE8, as its name implies, has 8 drivers. Now, how are these drivers configured? Well, basically it has 2 base drivers. They're all balanced armatures, by the way. 2 mid-range drivers and 4 treble balanced armature drivers. You might think that this is a very treble-centric earphone. These are not treble-centric in any form of way or size, you know, and this makes it very interesting. Let me start by saying about the build quality of the VE8. Now, the VE8 is a very interesting earphone. So it comes in this lovely emerald greenish color, and one thing to note about the body of the VE8 is that it is actually filled. So, you know, it is quite nice looking at the drivers inside it, so that it looks like, you know, the balanced armatures are actually magnified. So there is no air pockets, no bubbles, none of that shenanigans inside this earphone. Then on the faceplate, what is actually here is, well, they have a very nice, almost celluloid looking faceplate, but it's very reminiscent of traditional American fountain pen-esque design, and I think it's very pretty. It has a very nice blue lapis color that is mated to a nice yellowish orange topazy color, you know. It looks really quite stunning, and you know, hey, this is Visioneers. This is built like a tank. It comes in a 2-pin connector that is very tight and secure, so I don't really feel or fear that my 2-pin cables will drop, that kind of thing. Now, with regards to fit, these earphones are designed in a very organic shape, so there are no sharp edges, so it's very rounded. But what happens with it is that it fits very well. The nozzle is also slightly extended rather than it being shallow. I've actually swapped the stock ear tips, which are the spin fits. I'm personally not a fan of them, and I've swapped them for the final Type E. Now, when they are in your ear, they are actually very flush and they feel really good. I mean, it's very secure feeling. You don't feel like it's going to drop out anytime. And, you know, they just fit awesome. But one thing to note is that the Visioneers VE8 does not have any pressure relief system. So, in terms of inner ear pressure, you actually do feel it after a while, but on the whole, it's still a very comfortable universal IEM model. With regards to sound, you know, this earphone comes with 4 balanced armatures, specially catered to the treble sounds. But you know, this does not mean that they sound absolutely bright. On the other hand, they actually have very good resolution and clarity. So, you know, the treble does not scream, "Hey, look at me, I am the star of the show." No, they do not. It actually is a very reserved kind of sound. So you actually do get a lot of micro nuances, all the harmonics being there in the sound. It's just that it is not as obvious. In fact, one might think that they are a bit muted, but you know, that is how Visioneers chose to tune the Visioneers VE8. With regards to mid-range, well, I tell you what, the VE8, it is a beast for vocals. All the good things that you can say about warm, lush, mid-range, it is all available on the VE8. So basically, it does vocals in a very warm, cohesive manner, and again, it's not lacking in resolution at all. Vocals is very liquid, and what I really like about it is that there's a very good sense of realism, like the singer is singing right in front of you. Some people might say this is a very, you know, it's very in your face. I don't think so, but this is kind of a classic sound whereby IEM is tuned warm, and this one is done in an amazing manner. And lastly, with regards to bass, well, the VE8 actually has good rumble, so whenever a bass note hits, you can actually feel the resonance in the sound, and I think it does texture very well as well. It does texture fantastic also. Not only you can hear the rumble, but I can feel the tightness. It's just great. There's not too much to say. This is flagship caliber and it shows. Now, with regards to soundstage, the VE8 actually does a good job, but I wouldn't say that it is the biggest sounding soundstage, simply because this does not have a pressure relief system. This is a completely closed system. It is more like a closed headphone versus an open head. Things are a bit more intimate. In terms of width, well, the VE8 would not be the champion here. I mean, there's some physical limitations to it because it is simply closed. If you compare it against the competition such as from Fur Audio or 64 Audio, where they have their Apex or Atom modules, those sound really wider. But what you get here is, if you were to say the width of a 64 Audio or Fur Audio earphone, I would compare them to be a grand concert hall whereby it's very huge and wide. But for the Vision Ears VE8, it is more akin to a jazz club where it's smaller and more cozy. And if that's the reference for you, I think this is perfect. Johnny Depp. With regards to Depp, I think the VE8 does an amazing job. You know, a lot of top tier earphones, they do depth okay, but for the V8 it is great. What depth essentially means is how forward an instrument is or how backward an instrument is, and the difference between these 2 points. For the VE8, I think it's amazing. You know, if you're listening to, again, classical music, you have instruments that are closer to you, such as the violins. They do sound closer, whereby, you know, at the back of the orchestra, like the trombones, that kind of thing, they do sound a bit more far apart. But it is this that makes positioning very, very interesting, and actually it's more 3D sounding compared to the usual, you know, less depth IEM where things are a bit more smashed together, and this is really, really good for that. Now, in conclusion, the VE8 is actually a very wonderful, warm sounding earphone, and I think it's really quite amazing. One thing to note is that when I listen to the V8, I find myself actually listening to the mix as a whole rather than the individual parts. You know, a lot of flagship IEMs, they tend to be a bit more balanced and neutral, so you kind of listen for the individual layers. I don't find myself doing that for the V8. In fact, I think it's really quite an experience. I actually feel that I listen to music as a whole and it becomes a bit more enjoyable, albeit in a slightly different way. Talking coin, the V8 isn't cheap, but for a flagship, I think it really sits amongst its peers and it really does a good job. And if you enjoyed this review of the V8, please like and subscribe, and you know, please watch out for my future videos. I am planning something major coming up, and hopefully with the increase in production value, I can get a few more subscribers. I'm trying to hit 500 soon, and if I hit 500, you know, I might do something special for everybody. We shall see. And hopefully I want the plaque, you know, the YouTube plaque. It's quite nice, you know, so I can hang at the wall. But yeah, that's that. Thanks, guys.
Draw one out of cardboard for you.
I will do a cardboard one to, you know, give myself. We'll see. Thanks very much, guys.